Woman goes to dinner with her colleague and gets trapped in an unexpected situation. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe to m&rtv and hit the bell so you never miss any upload from us. Also, leave a like right now. Some strangers come in your life as a blessing, and then there are some who turn out to not be so pleasant. Laura, a college-going girl, had joined a new job. She was very nervous, but all her nervousness faded away when she met one of her colleagues, who became her friend in no time. He stayed by her side throughout the process and comforted her. The woman was clearly very happy. The first day went awesome, and she came back home with a cheerful heart. It was then her new friend asked her to join him at dinner. She agreed, and the two went to a restaurant for dinner. Like the previous ones, Laura had expected this to be a good one, but she was wrong. The girl had taken admission to the student government at college. She was very excited about her participation in a group that had the same motivation and passion as she did. These students are tasked with organizing and supervising many events, initiatives, policies, and programs close by school. She was growing impatient to join the group and make new friends. She was excited, but when the day to join the group arrived, she felt a pinch of anxiety as well. However, all her nervousness faded away when she felt the warmth the group exuded. All of them were friendly by nature, but there was one guy who helped her a lot in getting comfortable with her surroundings. The duo was in the same department. They soon hit it off. Though it was her first day, she gelled with him completely. The boy was very calm by nature and helped her to understand things. The boy asked her for her number so that he could help her if she faces any problem in the future. Laura, without suspecting anything off about it, gave him her number happily. The day had reached its end now, and it was time to head home. She said goodbye to all her group mates and her new friend. She had never expected that her first day would turn out to be so good. She could not wait to visit again the very next morning. But little did she know, in the middle of the evening and the morning, something unexpected was coming her way that would change her life completely. She was driving home when her phone beeped. She was all surprised to see who had texted her. It was the guy she had given her number to an hour ago. She pulled over her car and opened her message box only to see a surprising text from him. "Really enjoyed meeting you today. Care to join me for a bite to eat later?" Well, she had not expected this coming. It really confused her. She did not know if going with him for dinner would be fine or not, as she knew him for only a day. But then she changed her mind and decided to dine with him, as the man had really helped her a lot. In fact, Laura was happy that she had managed to find a friend. Going out on dinner with him would only help her get to know better about the group. Moreover, she had no plans for tonight. There was no harm in going out with him, at least that is what she thought. As the girl had moved into the city recently, she did not have many friends here. She used to eat dinner alone, and this was going to be after a long time someone was going to join her at dinner. She finally said yes. "I'd like that a lot," she replied. He suggested a place to eat that was quite far from her location. They set the time as well. As the girl was not very familiar with the place, the boy offered her a lift. She said yes. She went home and fit herself in very good clothes. After that, she did some touch-up to complete her gorgeous look. There was plenty of time on hand. Her excitement knew no bound, as she was in a new town meeting new people and enjoying fabulous food and new friends. But was this day particularly, this dinner, going to be enjoyable? She would figure out soon. The clock struck 7 and she shot a glance out of her window. There he was in his car waiting for her. He looked up and smiled at her. She clattered down the steps and jumped in the car while waving hi. The boy took her from her place and drove to the venue. The two discussed a lot about the job, but there was one thing that seemed very weird to Laura. She noticed that the boy was dodging the question regarding the college and group. Perhaps she was overthinking. They reached the venue within a half hour. He already had booked a table for them. It all seemed so good. Laura did not know that she was in for a very big surprise. They sat at the table and began chatting. They resumed their chat after ordering the food, but this time the chat took an odd turn. The guy had completely changed by then. He was no more the guy he was a few minutes ago, so Laura started getting uncomfortable. The girl was too stunned to react. It took her a while to understand that he was thinking of it as their date. Clearly, the man did not have good intentions. Unfortunately, there was no going back for Laura now. Her silence further emboldened him. He began making nasty comments about her. Moreover, the guy had no shame. He began throwing bad comments at her in a loud voice. Everyone around the room could hear it clearly. Her body had gone cold with shame. It was then the waiter interrupted them with their food. She felt relieved for a second. Laura wanted to get it over with as soon as possible, so she started gobbling on her food. She pretended that she was not listening to him, but all her efforts reached a dead end when the boy commented how quickly she was eating. She was not able to figure out how to deal with it, and now the man had commented over her eating habits, that, too, in front of so many people. She had never felt this embarrassed before. Her face had clearly gone red with shame and anger. Laura finally mustered the courage to speak up. She, with a firm tone, objected on his inappropriate comments and asked him to stop. However, the guy was too obstinate to quiet down. In fact, he shooed her down with his hands, and then he said something that made Laura's heart sink. He said with an evil smile, "Sweetheart, I picked you up. I know where you live." These words of his made her dizzy, so she was trapped now. She cursed herself for believing in a stranger so easily. She should have been careful about sharing her personal information with him, but it was too late now. She was struggling to come to terms with the reality when a loud noise of chair brought her out of her problem. She immediately glanced up as she felt someone staring at them. There was a man coming towards their table. Both of them looked at him with utter surprise as they both did not know who he was. He kept pacing towards them. In no time, the man was standing next to them. They continued looking at him as he got himself a chair, flipped it, and sat on it. The man had an athletic physique. He was tall and had a firm build. And after that, he did something that made the insolent guy go blank. He slipped his hand in his pocket and took out his police ID. He placed that before the guy on the table. Everything was clear now. No need to say the boy was at a loss for words. He tried to speak up, but fumbled on his words. Whereas the boy had gone discolored, Laura took a sigh of relief. Surely her guardian angel had sent him for her. She sat there quietly watching everything happen in front of her. The man said, "So I'm quietly celebrating my daughter's birthday with my family." He then looked over at her and said, "When I distinctly hear you threaten this young lady, would you care to explain yourself?" The police knew that he had no answer for it. Now see, we take a very dim view of that kind of thing, so right now, I'm deciding if I want to have some of my buddies come pick you up, he continued. The tables had turned now. The man who was threatening her a few minutes ago was now himself shivering with fear. She wanted to laugh and cry both at the same time. She had never felt so happy before seeing a cop. She decided to stay quiet. The cop kept threatening the boy, but that would disrupt everyone's dinner. So how about you hand me your ID, because I wouldn't want you running off on me. Then you go see one of the staff here and settle your bill. The full bill now. This young lady shouldn't go hungry on account of your poor behavior. Or we can go with the first option. I'll leave it up to you. It was enough to put him back in his place. He handed his ID to the cop and ran to pay the bill. The man fulfilled his duty even though he was off duty. He even apologized to Laura for intruding. "Sorry about that, miss. I hope I'm not intruding. It just seemed like you could use some help. Oh, and don't worry, if you want to pursue this further, I'll have some of the boys pick him up on his way home. We can definitely take this further." She thanked him for interrupting and putting an end to that boy's misbehavior. But was it actually the end? The boy knew where she was living, and also she would have to see him again at college. Though the cop had saved her from him today, she still was worried about what was going to happen tomorrow. The story is indeed not over yet. Laura was soon going to find out something surprising about that guy. No need to say the man had lied big time. There was a lot to find out. Coming back to that day, the officer knew that the girl was still worried about the guy. He asked her to join them for dinner. "Well, I'm here with my daughter. She's about your age. Perhaps you'd like to finish your meal with us. We can run you home afterward if you'd like, unless you'd prefer to call someone else." Well, she could not refuse the offer. Meanwhile, she was having dinner with the cop and his family. The guide showed up again after paying the bill. He asked the cop for his ID. "There you go. Now I have all your details right here. so I highly recommend you don't go near or contact this lady ever again," he said. She felt greatly relieved when she heard those words from the cop. She really hoped that the guy would take it seriously and would never hover around her again. The cop had instructed him to get lost. The guy replied, yes, of course, I'm so sorry." He turned around and rushed to get out of the sight of the cop. He did not even look at the girl. It was then Laura felt like a big burden had gone off her chest. She could breathe again freely. Once the boy disappeared, she took a sigh of relief and thanked the officer. She could not hold back her tears as she had no idea what the boy would have done with her had the cop not interrupted. People usually ignore these kinds of issues. This was the first time she was feeling good in the restaurant. She cheerfully picked up her plate and moved to the officer's table. They stayed in the restaurant until it was closing time. More than half of the customers had left the place. Laura could not understand how time flew by with the cop's family. She really enjoyed her time with them, but now it was time to head back home. The cop offered her a ride home. She agreed as she had no other option. The cop dropped her off in front of her home's door. She still had doubts in her mind. When she got off the car, she looked around to see if everything was fine. Though she was safe and secure right now, the same could not be said about tomorrow. The boy had her home address. What if he would ignore the cop's warning and would stalk her? However, she got assured by the cop that nothing of this sort would happen with her again. He even gave her his number. She thanked the cop and his family for including her in celebrations. The family stayed outside until the girl had reached inside the house safely. She waved goodbye to the family and they went home. She still had the fear of seeing him again in the morning lingering in her mind. What would she do then? She could not sleep the whole night. However, she was relieved too, as she had the cop's number, whom she could call whenever the need arises. She did not know that another surprise was awaiting her at college. When she reached her college again, there was no trace of the guy. She felt relieved and happy. Had he ran away? Well, yes, he actually had. But what surprised her the most was the fact that the boy was not at her college. He had been lying all this while, not only to get her number. No doubt he was the biggest creep she had ever seen or ever dealt with in her life. Now the pieces were beginning to fall in place. This is why he did not reply to any of her questions about the job. The story surfaced when a Reddit user asked people to share their story of the worst nice guy. There was a Redditor going by the name Throwaway for Pancake who narrated the story. The user had overheard the conversation between the boy and her supposed date. He wrote, "So possibly one of the coolest things I've ever seen. I mean, you know how you hear the woman want him, men want to be him stuff in movies? Well, I'm a man, and by God, I wanted to be this guy anyway. I'm having dinner with my girlfriend at the time, and behind us are a couple on a date. It is not going well. The guy was being rather creepy and making some pretty inappropriate comments. The girl doesn't look at all comfortable." Throwaway for Pancakes almost got up to intervene on her behalf, but just as he did, an older man put a hand on his shoulder and said, "I've got this one, son." The Redditor replied, No, I'm one of those get-involved types of people, and there's no way I'm sitting here watching this go down. I get up, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm 23, fighting fit, and happy to put that dork through a wall. I may have had a slight temper in my youth, but anyway." He continued, "I was halfway out of my chair when a hand came down on my shoulder, and I look up to this mid-50s but super fit guy who says, 'Easy, I've got this one, son.'" Many people appreciated this story and commented. One of the commenters, going by the name Conquerus, wrote, "Wow, this might be one of my favorite stories. It gives me such a nice and fuzzy feeling. I'm so glad there's people like that around, but also like you, as you wanted to help her out. And it kind of restores my faith in humanity, especially after reading this thread."